right, hey everyone, it is Dave. Welcome in. I've got my coffee. I've got the fan going because it's a muggy night. Today is June the 4th, 2026. It's about 11:30 at night, and I thought I would put a book video together. I pulled 20 books from the stacks, and literally they are stacks across the room of books. And I don't even want to count, but I am. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 10 stacks of books. And there's about 40 in each stack. And so this is half of a stack. It's a very eclectic list tonight, because when I look at these books, I mostly put them together because of size rather than subject matter. Back in the day, when I had a lot less books, I did everything by subject matter. All the Sherlock Holmes was together. All the other mystery was together. All the biographies were together. And it was very inefficient for storage and size and everything like that in terms of room that I needed. Once I switched to having all the books the same size being stored together, I was able to get a lot more books. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm just going to go through these, and I'm going to show you some really cool books tonight. The first one is Fahrenheit 451, a book about books, right? This is the 40th anniversary edition of it. It is a very cool book because it is also signed by Ray Bradbury, and this is his signature. So Ray Bradbury, in the early 2000s, I got to see him a couple of times in person at the UCLA Festival of Books. Now, back in the day, the UCLA Festival of Books was at UCLA. Today it's at USC, and the LA Times got involved, and it's now a big commercial thing. But back in the day, it was amazing because you'd have people like Ray Bradbury hanging out. You'd have a lot of local celebrities. I actually met Heidi Fleiss at one of them. She had written a book. A number of different authors. Michael Connelly was always there. And I was trying to think, who is the other person that I wanted to tell you about? Julie Andrews. So back in the day, Julie Andrews read me a bedtime story. So I'm in my early 30s. Julie Andrews had written a children's book, and she was at one of these events, and there were all these kids there and me sitting cross-legged, and she read me a story, and I'm just like, this is the best thing ever. Mary Poppins has read to me a bedtime story. So anyway, I picked this up on one of my visits to that book fair. The second book I'll talk about is Perspective Made Easy. This is actually a book you can get for free to download from Project Gutenberg. And this is the Bible as far as perspective goes. What is perspective? This, in the case of art, is the way that we're able to create three-dimensional spaces on a two-dimensional surface, and it's a mathematical formula. This book first came out in the 1930s. 1939, I believe, to be exact. And then it shows us about how we see and how we view the world. And it's a really good book. It's something that I normally talk about in terms of my classes, how we create buildings and images like this that look real, even though they're on flat surfaces. So it's really a great book about perspective. A newer book that I haven't read yet is actually by Rebecca Romney from Pawn Stars fame, and she has her own book company, Type Punch Matrix. And so this is her first book, and it is really, really cool because this one is also, I believe it's signed. We'll see here in just a moment. Put this down and take a look. There it is. It's actually signed to me by Rebecca Romney. So I'll take that. One of my favorite books. I've never talked to her in person. I'm hoping to someday, but I do buy several books. I have bought several books from that company, and they've been fantastic. In fact, if you watched my Sherlock Holmes video, the book that I have from Nigel Bruce, that came through her bookstore. So, another bookstore that I buy a lot of books from, because I'm an addict, is the Bookman in the city of Orange. It's down the street from Disneyland. It's on Catella. They are not sponsors of this program by any means, but I absolutely love their bookshop. This is their newest location. They used to be on Tustin Avenue many, many moons ago. I've probably been buying from them for about 25 years as well. And I just picked up a couple really interesting books. One is called The Creators, and the other is called The Discoverers. Take a look at how thick they are. So I bought these because they dealt with artists, and they also dealt with people like Christopher Columbus. So I was just going to breeze through here, and they're not that expensive. They're, $10 books, $12 books. They're not that bad as far as price goes. So this talks about the creator, both God, man, craftsman to artist, time and space, creating the self, recreating the world, the immortal world, the human comedy, the riddle of creation. It sounds like a really interesting book. And page-wise, oh boy, 807. And that's the creators. And then also we'll take a look at the discoverers. The discoverers here, once again, this would be stories more along the lines of Christopher Columbus and people like that. As soon as I find the table of contents here, the geography of the imagination, seeing the invisible inside ourselves, cataloging the creation, see paths everywhere, doubling the world, paths to the east, such as the discovery of Asia. Wow. Just, again, a history of man's search to know his world and himself. What a cool book. All right. So that's the first 5. The next 5 I'm going to go over is also kind of, we'll do some groups here. I bought a edition called Byzantium. I'll show you the different books here. There are 3. Here's the first one, and I'm not sure how to pronounce that word. I think it's apogee. Byzantium is by John Julius Norwich, who is a scholar in this time period, primarily the Middle Ages. That was a loud crack of the binding. He wrote a history of Venice, architecture of southern England, Byzantium, the Normans in the south, and again, just a really cool book. This is also one of the more beautiful book sets, I believe. I love the image here. This would be, I believe, the middle book. Here is the first one, the early centuries, and this is Emperor Justinian, one of the last Roman emperors. I don't necessarily think he falls into the good emperor category, but he's not a bad emperor either. But there was a lot of civil unrest when he was an emperor. This is when the Roman Empire split into 2 portions, the east side and west side, and he very, in terms of this image here, this is actually on the wall of a church called San Vitale, which is in the city of Ravenna, which is like the new Roman Empire capital for the West. And then the last book in the series is this one here, and it's The Decline and Fall. So again, just a beautiful set of books, and I'm looking forward to reading through those. I have not read through them yet, and the idea of these is I thought they looked so good that they would probably sit up on the bookshelf pretty nicely. And yes, I need another bookshelf too. As far as some other books that you may be familiar with, 6 Days of the Condor. James Grady is the author. Look at how thin this book is. That really kind of surprised me. This is the novel for the film, the film is 3 Days of the Condor. This book was a little bit pricey. It ran $20, but it is hardback. It is a book club edition too. So, and this one is from 1974. Cool. And I absolutely love the film. You know, you can't get better than that. And if you have not seen 3 Days of the Condor, absolutely you got to see it. There are a couple sequels to this. Shadow of the Condor is one of them, and maybe Return of the Condor. I have not heard great things about either of them, but I haven't read them, so I can't really speak about that. A couple weeks ago, I did a video that had a lot of H.P. Lovecraft books in it, and I'm going to have to do a separate H.P. Lovecraft video. This is a very special copy of The Case of Charles Dexter Ward. Charles Dexter Ward is a standalone novel. It's kind of like he wrote a lot of short stories, but there were 2 main novels, maybe 3. Call of Cthulhu, yeah, that can be a standalone novel. It's a really good story, and it takes about an hour to read through it. The other 2 are much longer. This is a couple-hour read. And then there's also At the Mountains of Madness, which is the largest writing he did. I think that's about maybe 3 hours worth of writing or reading. There's one other, and I think it's The Dream Quest of the Unknown Kadath. I'm not big into his science fiction compared to more of his true mysteries. This is the very first introduction I had to H.P. Lovecraft. And it is amazing. It is the best story ever. And I give it a lot of credit for bringing me back into reading, because for a long time, I just kind of would read a little bit and then set the book aside. And I was just looking for an author that was amazing. And I found it in H.P. Lovecraft. Once I read this and I read Call of Cthulhu, I just started getting more and more into this type of genre. This particular book has, and hopefully has, maybe it doesn't. I thought it had some pictures. It does. But it's at the very end. So some of the buildings that Lovecraft mentions in this story, they have pictures of. So that's one of the cool things about Lovecraft books, is that he does mention buildings that are nearby. Now, for The Case of Charles Dexter Ward, it's about basically bringing people back from the dead. So it's really, really cool. Mythology by Edith Hamilton. I need to read this book because I talk about mythology, Greek mythology, in some of my ancient civilization classes. And I just do a very superficial talk. But this is, from what I understand, just an amazing book. This is one of the seminal writers in this particular genre. This book here, see if we find a year on it, 1942. I just thought it was so beautiful, and I should probably take a look at the chapters. The Titans and 12 great Olympians, the gods of the water, the underworld, the lesser gods of earth, the Roman gods, Demeter, Dionysus, Prometheus, Hercules, Atalanta, the fall of Troy, the house of Atreus, the royal tomb of Thebes. Oh, what a great book. I'm going to have to move that up in my to be read column, because this is just an outstanding book. One that is special to me, and I should have brought this up earlier when we were talking about art, is Oh Artful Death. And this is by Sarah Stewart Taylor. I got this signed at a bookstore that doesn't exist anymore, and I'm trying to remember the name. It was in Thousand Oaks. Maybe some coffee will help me. It did. It did. Mysteries to Die For is what the bookstore was called. Wonderful older lady sold it. She had owned it for a long time. Now I can't remember her name, and I don't think coffee will help with that. But it was like, was it Angela? I can't remember. But she was an older lady, retired, sold it to her 3 employees. They didn't do so good of a job keeping it up, and it ended up closing. So I felt really bad because she had some of the coolest authors at her bookstore, and I would drive out there maybe every couple of months or so. But Oh Artful Death is a story about primarily all these carvings in old cemeteries on tombstones. What's wonderful about this, and I even have the receipt. How do you like that? I bought this Where's the date? July 10th, 2003. And so I ended up having a conversation with this lady. I should have just looked at this page because she signed it also with the date. And she says to Dave, "Good luck with the art history. Enjoy." And it was so funny. About a year or two ago, I wrote her back. I had taken a picture of this and sent it to her on Facebook. And I was like, "You signed this in my book." And I just wanted to let you know that I got my degree in art history because I was a student at this time. I had not graduated yet. And I was telling her how much I loved art history. And I was like, "Yeah, I graduated, got my bachelor's, got my master's, went to work for a museum, and now I'm a teacher." And so she was like all excited about that. And so it was just great to interact with her again, like 20 years later. All right, where should we go from here? One of the more beautiful books, and one publisher that I've really never owned before because they were so expensive. But I wanted to read about Lewis and Clark. I thought, what great stories this would be. And so I have a 2-volume edition of Lewis and Clark journals by Easton Press. And Easton Press is just known for how expensive they are. So there is the front book plate in it, some really nice end papers. It's almost like wallpaper. There is texture to it. How interesting. And it reflects oddly, and it's just, what a neat book. Has some pictures of Lewis and Clark. Of course, it has the bookmark. Very nice typeset. It does have a scent to it, but it's definitely not a decaying scent. It's a new book scent. And let's see, when were these books published? Easton Press, 1993. So not too bad. So probably, what is that, a little bit over 30 years ago, 35 years ago. 2 volumes in that book set. And again, that's on my to be read list. I have a lot of to be read books. After that, also in the history genre, A Distant Mirror by Barbara, and I can never remember her name, Tuckman, The Calamitous 14th Century. The 14th century is an amazing time period because what's happening was we are moving from Gothic art like this into the Renaissance. And that happens during this time period of the 14th century or the 1300s. And a lot of people call it different things. So I always call it the early Renaissance. However, a lot of other people call it the Proto-Renaissance. Some people call it the Late Gothic. It's just a very unique time period. So I'll read a little bit about it here. The 14th century gives us back two contradictory images. On the one hand, a glittering time of crusades and castles, cathedrals and chivalry, and exquisitely illuminated books of hours. On the other hand, a time of ferocity and spiritual agony, a world plunged into chaos. How cool. In this book, we look at proud cardinals, beggars, bailiffs, feminists, Jews, scholars of the university, grocers, bankers, clerks, sorcerers, mercenaries, saints, and mystics. What a great summary. So, I have read a little bit of that. It is amazing. It is amazing. So, that's definitely a plus on my list. One book, and we're just going to do, I think, one mystery tonight. And this is, I would tell you, besides Sherlock Holmes, my favorite author, and I know Sherlock Holmes is not an author, it's Arthur Conan Doyle, Ross MacDonald in his books. I have several Ross MacDonald books. Again, probably someone I'd have to do a separate video on. But when I was getting my degree, one of my teachers saw me reading a book on Raymond Chandler. And she's all, have you ever read Ross MacDonald? And I'm like, no, I haven't. And she goes, start with, I think it's The Big Chill. And she goes, see if you like it. And I loved it. It's about a decade after Chandler. So these are mostly from the 1950s, although some are from the very late 40s as well. And so I think he wrote, and he ended up dying maybe in the 1960s. He did die pretty young. He had a daughter who died very young too. I know there was a lot of tragedy in this person's life. But his books are easy to read. They are noir. They are kind of like private detective books. Lou Archer is the detective in them, and they're fantastic. So I can't tell you enough about any Ross MacDonald book. These are the later novels, Black Money, The Instant Enemy, The Goodbye Look, and The Underground Man. So this is my Library of America edition. Most of the books are about 200 pages, 220, something like that. So this book itself, even though it looks kind of on the small side, it's about 800 pages. Library of America uses what I call Bible paper. It's very thin, higher quality, and it's a beautiful book. So 4 more to do, and then we'll be done for tonight. The first one I'm going to tell you is a good book. It is by Anne Fadiman, and it's called Rereadings. And it's what would you reread if you had the chance? And she interviews a number of different authors. So is a book the same book, or a reader the same reader the second time around? The 17 authors in this witty and poignant collection of essays all agree on the answer: never. So 17 authors rereading their favorite books. I remember getting this book because there was a time where I was very into plays. I would go to plays, and I loved reading plays because I thought they were pretty easy to read. This particular one is called 6 Characters in Search of an Author and Other Plays. Luigi Pirandello, and I probably am not pronouncing that correct. Pirandello lived from 1867 to 1936. This volume of plays opens up with a very controversial work, and the 6 characters invade the stage and demand to be included in the play. Okay. I have heard good things about this particular play, so that's why I got this book. I bought it from Amazon, I can tell you that much. It's on the to be read pile, much further down. We'll do this one, and then we'll do one last one. We All Went to Paris. What a cool book that is. Americans in the City of Light, 1776. Sounds familiar. To 1971. Americans' fascination with Paris began even before we became a nation. Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson spent agreeable afternoon in its salons and shops, as well as long hours attending to their diplomatic missions. For them, whether to stay in Paris or return home was not an easy choice. Ever since, thousands of extraordinary Americans have faced a similar dilemma. And what a cool book. I'm looking forward to reading that too. The last one was one given to me by my dad, probably about 30 years ago, definitely in the 90s, and it's Walking Southern California. And this is just a field guide for walking the best trails and things like that throughout Southern California. So it'll give you sometimes a picture. It will also give you, let's see if there's a map here in some of them. Sometimes they just have like the title of it, the La Jolla Valley Loop Trail, 7 miles, 700-foot gain, so not too bad. Some of them do have maps as well. And this is all throughout Southern California. So from San Diego up to the Los Angeles region. Page amount, about 400 pages, 370. So again, Walking Southern California, a really cool book. And that was already 20 books in just under half an hour. So I hope you enjoyed looking at those. I definitely did. I'm a little scared at how many are still back over there, and I got a lot of reading to do. So I hope everyone has a great evening, and I will see you shortly with the next video. I think I'm going to do one on Raymond Chandler next.